What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Rudy Gobert is finally moving from Utah. We saw the news break a little earlier yesterday, about 20 or so hours ago. Rudy Gobert is being traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, we'll get into the details for both teams in a few, but let's just go ahead and talk about the pieces that the Minnesota Timberwolves sent to Utah. So, obviously, Minnesota had to give up a pretty hefty price for this trade. Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Walker Kessler, who they just recently drafted. He even had a video come out of him in the locker room with his locker for the Timberwolves, and they trade him already. Leandro Balmaro and Jared Vanderbilt. So V8 is on the move as well. I hated that one for the Timberwolves. I think he has a ton of potential. On top of that, 4 first-round picks from, I believe, 2023, 25, 27, and then a protected one in 2029. So, obviously, this was a major trade in the NBA. We had a lot of people break this one. I believe Waj came out and broke it. Shams they were battling the whole free agency period to see who could get there first. And let's talk about the Jazz first, because I think this is an important marking in what we can expect from them in the next few weeks or this offseason as a whole, because obviously we didn't really know who they were going to trade away first, whether it's Rudy Gobert or Donovan Mitchell, or if they were going to try and right the ship and ride it out. But obviously now it's clear they're going to be rebuilding. You don't have Donovan Mitchell and these pieces you got, and you're not a contending team unless you bring in another star. Chances are that's not going to happen with who has re-signed. Most of the stars are off the market now. So as far as we can tell, the Jazz are pretty much primed for a rebuild, and with that likely means Donovan Mitchell is more available than he has been the entire offseason. Now, chances are he's still going to have a hefty price. They're going to have to give up, you're going to have to give up picks, probably some young players. I really like the Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and a few picks trade to the Miami Heat if I'm Utah. I think Tyler Hero, maybe he can't get to that superstar level, but he can at least give you something entertaining until you can find that guy. He can get you butts in the seats. He can make you money. He can score. He can win you a few games. Duncan Robinson's a guy that if he improves his defense, he is going to be one of the better role players in the NBA just because of his three-point shooting ability. So the Jazz have options. We've seen the Knicks as one team that has been rumored for Donovan Mitchell, but I believe it would involve around Julius Randle, something like that. So I don't think there's much interest there if I'm the Jazz, because you want to get a younger player, a guy that has promise, a guy that can improve. And after their Jalen Brunson debacle, after their fumble of Jalen Duren in the draft, trading him to Detroit and Kemba Walker for basically nothing, I mean, the Knicks just ruined their offseason, and this isn't a video about them, but I honestly think it might have ruined their chances as well at getting a trade for Donovan Mitchell. If you take a selection right there and you draft a young player, the Knicks are in a much better situation as far as trading for Donovan Mitchell, just because they have somebody that they could say, hey, we'll give you this guy, and he could be really good in a few years. So they have a guy like that, but now they don't because they traded him away and they traded the pick away. So I think the Knicks are probably off the board, but I do really like the Heat trade if I'm a Jazz fan or if I'm the Jazz general manager. I just feel like they can get a lot of value back from the Heat. Maybe not in the picks, but as far as the players they get, like Tyler Hero or Duncan Robinson, two guys that I still think have some room to improve, while Tyler Hero has a lot more room to improve instead of Duncan Robinson, but you got to include multiple pieces to make the salaries match. So that's the Jazz side of things. Obviously, they're going to be going into a rebuild, chances are, and if they don't trade Donovan Mitchell, I'm interested to see if they make a move for another star. I mean, there's guys out there maybe that they could trade for, but I don't think it's very likely. Obviously, they're not in the market for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is not going to play in Utah. I can tell you that right now. If he did, I would sell all of my money in savings and make a bet that the Jazz are going to win a championship. I don't think either of those things would happen. But if Kevin Durant goes to Utah, that is going to be a miracle. Probably the biggest trade and the most surprising trade in NBA history, in my opinion. Nobody would have ever guessed that. But the Jazz are going to be rebuilding. Now we switch over to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and that's where this trade really starts to rub me the wrong way. I don't really know how this trade is going to help the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, they have Karl-Anthony Towns. They don't give up D'Angelo Russell in this trade, which in my opinion is a big win for them. They still have D'Lo. So they still have their starting point guard. They still got Anthony Edwards, their starting shooting guard / small forward, whichever position they go there. Karl Anthony Towns was not included in the deal. And honestly, at the end of the day, they did give up a lot of role players. Malik Beasley was a guy that had been kind of slowly but steadily getting better in the NBA for the Timberwolves. Patrick Beverley obviously was a lot of the personality of that team last year, but he's gone now. Walker Kessler and Leandro Balmaro, two guys that we didn't see much of. Kessler obviously just getting drafted. And Jared Vanderbilt, a guy that did not reach his peak yet, but a guy that in my opinion has still a lot of potential to become a better player. I think he can be great. He's already a great defender. Really, the offensive side of the ball is where he needs to focus now, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, all of those guys are gone. All of their first-round picks are essentially gone. And that leaves you with two very slow and very clunky big men. You've got Karl Anthony Towns, a dominant offensive center, a guy that's not going to get you a lot of defensive statistics, not going to wow you on defense. But then you bring in Rudy Gobert, a guy that's basically non-existent on offense, but he has a lot of defensive capabilities. We know he's won DPOY multiple times across his career, so it seems like a match made in heaven. And in my opinion, it's kind of funny how it looks, because if you look at the surface value, this trade is fairly decent for the Timberwolves. They get two guys that basically are a puzzle piece, one dominant offensive center and one dominant defensive center, and they come together and they make the ultimate big man duo. One's going to play at power forward, one at center. I'd imagine Rudy Gobert's the center, Karl Anthony Towns is the power forward, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's that simple. If you look at everything they gave up, 4 first-round picks is a lot of value for a guy that basically was traded because he was non-existent in a playoff run for their team. He didn't have much impact on the game. His offensive struggles have really started to show through the last few years and show just how little or have shown just how small his value truly is. Despite amazing defensive play, just the defense is not enough to make him a player you want to give up all these packages for. And then on top of that, you give up a guy that you just drafted, a guy that didn't even get on the court for you, didn't even put on a Timberwolves jersey, so who knows how good he can be. Malik Beasley still has a lot of room to improve. Patrick Beverley was the heart and soul of that team last year. He was one of the reasons you guys won a few of those games, just because of how much he put out there on the court against the Timberwolves, how much he put out on defense. His playmaking ability has been better the past few seasons. Offensively, he's not always there as far as shooting and scoring, but at the end of the day, he supplied your team with so much value, and you get rid of him. You give up Jared Vanderbilt, one of the better up-and-coming defenders, in my opinion, a guy that has been amazing the last few years for you guys. He's slowly become a better player. He's not the greatest shooter, but offensively, he has improved in the paint and the mid-range game. And I just think the Timberwolves gave up way too much. And honestly, I think this trade does not make a lot of sense for them. In my opinion, if you were making a trade like this, you've got to go all in after another guard or a forward, maybe even like a Zach LaVine or Bradley Beal type, maybe even a Kevin Durant type. I mean, I think this trade package could be a similar package to whatever the teams send to for Kevin Durant, just because the Nets are basically forced to trade him. So you have really a little bit of leverage there, despite KD being one of the best players in the NBA. I don't think this trade ends up being as good as it would or looks on paper or on the surface level for the Timberwolves. I think it's going to help them maybe this year, but I think after that they're really going to start to see the harm in this trade and all the pieces they lost. I think it's going to hurt them in the long run. We've never seen Rudy Gobert really compete for a finals. We've never seen him be able to take that next jump as an offensive player or an NBA player as a whole. So I think this trade is really going to hurt them. And I also didn't include that they have a swap in 2026 where they get the worst picks. So that's basically 5 first-round picks given up. Way too much in this trade for the Timberwolves. The Utah Jazz, I love this trade, especially if they end up trading Donovan Mitchell. They have the opportunity to trade him for even more first-round picks. And it kind of looks like they're going the route of the Thunder on this rebuild, just getting a lot of young players, a lot of picks. And if they trade Mitchell to a team that is willing to give up this type of trade package as well, man, they're gonna have a good rebuild already. I can tell you that they're set up for a promising future. How do you guys feel about this trade? No, I'm a little late. If you saw my last video, just had my wisdom teeth out, so I'm still healing over that. It's been about a week or so, 8 days today, so I have Had to take a few days off there, but I'm glad I was able to get this video out relatively soon. Thank you guys for joining me on this one. I'll see you next time.